Hi and welcome. This time around we're taking a look at an interesting tool, but this is not it. In the past I possibly have shown this, I don't know. I purchased this up when I had a problem that I needed to check inside a piece of equipment. This is a Harbor Freight borescope. I put his endoscope in there. It's got a fiber optic camera and light, and lets you see inside a few inches with a 2.4 inch LCD. The quality is mediocre. Here's what I was warning about the batteries. Yep, take a look at that. I just stored the batteries in here just sitting. One of them died, and when it died, it leaked. That just seems how alkalins fail. The moment they die, then they leak all over everything, and the alkaline stuff deteriorates the metal. So never leave your batteries in things. Normally, I would leave them in a plastic bag inside the case with it, if that's what I was going to do. And it looks like the camera on this borescope is built into the end, and they carry the electronics through separately, and then it's got a light. But this is only good for a short amount of depth. We're not here to review this particular product, but what I'm going to look at is similar to this, except it goes in a full 50 feet, which is awesome. That'll let me check out some stuff at work that I will talk more about coming up. What I am going to be looking at is this digital inspection camera from TESLONG. They sent it to me for evaluation, so yes, I did not pay for it, but I think this is going to be really handy for me at work. Depends on how stiff this section is right here, because although this was designed for things like checking out sewers because it's waterproof, it has adjustable LED lights and wide angles, and although this was designed for sewers, I think in mind, I think that's what their plan was anyways, my use for it is actually going to be checking out conduits where I pull cables at work all the time, and a lot of times you'll try to put the fish tape through. Even a 3/8 inch fish tape, which is really heavy duty, will get stuck at points, and hopefully I can slide this down and see where the problem is and then negotiate around it, because a lot of times you just sort of twist the fish tape, rotate it around and around until you're hoping to catch a clear spot to get past the stoppage. With this, I'm hoping I'll be able to go in and check out and see what's going on. There's one particular run that I've been doing a fair number of pulls on, and it's really hard to pull. And if you leave a pull rope in, the pull rope twists around the wires as you pull it in, and then if you pull really hard to get the wire in, that rope will cut the existing wires in the trough, so pull ropes don't really work well. You can use soap, which we had to use the last 2 times we pulled, but that still didn't solve the problem. I'm hoping this will let me see what the problem is and negotiate around it. The packaging is interesting. Got a slide off portion here, and then looks like it just pops out the top here. I guess I didn't need to even remove the slide out portion. Oh, I was worried about that. Oh, thank goodness it comes in a case, because storing 50 feet, trying to wrangle a 50-foot long fiber scope or borescope or digital inspection camera as they call it, I think would be a serious pain. That'll make things definitely somewhat easier. I like that. I use this, so I think I'll be using this so much at work, I'm just going to end up leaving it there. All right. Nice packaging. Wow. Okay. It's got a manual. Comes with a return shipping label? No kidding. Look at that. No, it's not a shipping label. It's just a return label. It tells you how to send it back. Maybe you got to write a number on it, tell you whether broken or disliked. Anyways, I won't be sending this back almost certainly. It's got some accessories. Typically these accessories go on the end of the scope. I'll be curious to see what that's for. Looks like USB. And a very light and very large viewfinder on the viewer here. So it looks like it charges with USB-C, and it also supports micro secure digital. I'm guessing it can record. That's fantastic, because I was hoping that it would record so I wouldn't have to try and shoot this with my camera. At least for shooting the video, it's going to be really handy for me. In a real world situation, maybe it'll let you save the video to remember where the clog is so you can get by it the same way you did the previous time. That's pretty nice. Looks like you have to charge this guy up with any standard USB charger. It doesn't come with the transformer. So let me charge this guy up and we'll be back. Before I get this guy charged, I forgot. Let's just take a look at the cable. So it's braided reinforced cabling that is stiff enough that I think you could push it pretty reasonably. That's cool. Instead of having to worry about this thing unreel itself every time, they've got Velcro keepers on here, which is pretty handy. This is the part I was worried about, but that's really flexible, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. Now the question is, will this be stiff enough to push through tight cables? I don't know if this was designed for cables in a conduit, but that's really what I want to use it for, because like I said, at work I have that problem all the time. In the end of this guy, they have an extension for the camera, which I guess you don't have to necessarily use, but this is fairly stiff, so if you want to avoid the stiff portion or leave it in here and just pay this guy out, you can. That's pretty handy. All right, let's charge this guy up and take a look. So here's an appropriate use case where the place I work, in this equipment room, which is just one of many, a device like this router, basically routes video from any of 576 sources to 576 destinations. And with that comes a ton of cabling. So all of these cables need to get from place to place. And the way they do that starts with cable trays, which get very, very full, because over the years, new cables are added and old cables are not removed because they're buried and it takes too much time. So the cable trays get fuller and fuller. But that's not the hard part. What do you do when you need to go between buildings, which we do all the time? So when you're trying to get all of the content from one location to another, from all of these devices, you're talking tens of thousands of wires, and the way they get from place to place is through conduits like this, and those conduits get full quickly. And sometimes pulling a wire, you run into a snag, and it's very difficult to get the wire through. This is where a camera would be really helpful to find out where the snag is, and sometimes you can route the cable around it. You don't always have the choice of another conduit. Sometimes you have to make it work. One good example is to get from this building over to the buildings over there. A bunch of cables go through this conduit here. I don't know if you can get the size, but this is 6-inch conduit. And this is full of cables, and somewhere down below, even though the cables may only be that large in diameter relative to 6 inches, there's a snag somewhere down below, and pulling cables through here is a nightmare, especially getting the fish tape through initially. So the camera will help, potentially helping you guide a cable or the fish tape around that clog. Let's see if we can take a look. Right, so I've opened the cover on this conduit, and like I said, the wires inside fill up only a tiny fraction of the overall thickness of this guy if you look up there. So it's maybe 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches diameter, but still the cables are taut. Now there's a bunch of things that can cause that. One thing is when you've got a fairly tall conduit like this, right at that bend there, all the cables are going to be pulling on the inside corner, because all of the weight of the cables, which continue down underground about another 3 or 4 feet, are all pulling on that bend. And if I feed the camera up there, I should be able to see this. The protective threaded cap unremoved, and that is where you can thread on other accessories. So when you get this guy clogged, one thing you can do is you can unscrew the tip of the camera and screw on this attachment here, which will help keep it spaced a little bit better. Maybe this will work. All right, so here we go. And you'll notice as this feeds, it's very easy for whatever you're feeding to go in between the existing cables. And you'll see a couple times that that's going to happen. And when it goes in between them, now I'm just adding friction the whole way. So if this pull is hundreds of feet long, then obviously you can see we're going to have problems. The friction is going to steadily increase as I'm having the weight of the cables pinching on all sides or multiple sides of the fish tape, or in this case, the camera. So I back it off and try and get outside that cable bundle. And one thing I'm hoping is to find, and here we are past that bend, and you can see the cables hanging down. There's that bend I was telling you about. And the cables hang down around the bottom side because all of their weight is pulling against that inside corner. Now we're going to turn around and go the other way. This is down the other direction. You can see the pull string here. And the pull string itself is, with all the slack, is wrapped around the cables here, which is causing a problem. And then there's also the junctions between the conduits. So when you go to a male piece of pipe to a female coupler, that joint only goes smoothly in one direction and not the direction I'm feeding. So you can see that corner right there. There's both sides of the corner. And you can also see how the pull string is wrapped around rather than just straight in a straight line around all these cables. And so slowly the friction increases and increases, and even the camera that's doing a really good job of feeding starts to get a little tight. There's the pull string up above us. And in no time at all, the friction starts building up, even on the camera that's doing a pretty darn good job. As I measured it, I'm about 35 feet in, and the friction's starting to get significant here. And even as good as the design of the camera is with the cables here, it's getting tough. Very hard to push forward. Now you can imagine with a fish tape, same exact problem. So I'm going to pull this guy out, and I'm going to attach one of the other attachments that's not as big. I've got that tri-lobed attachment on the end there, trying to keep the cables spaced, but I'm going to see if I can do better with just the straight camera. I don't know how you feel about this view. It's pretty bizarre. That's removing the tri-lobed attachment and putting on the normal small end. I'll see if we can make better progress this way. Alright, here we go again. This time with just no tri-lobed attachment that's about 1 inch diameter. This is much smaller. This is maybe a 1/4 inch, a little over diameter. And even though originally most of these cables were pulled in together in parallel, they all twist when you pull them. It's just a natural problem when you pull cables in. So when conduits, you can't even get a conduit close to half full and pull cables easily in general. In special circumstances you can. In this one, there's 4 90-degree bends, which is more than you should have to a pull point. So that adds a lot of extra friction. Every 90 is a significant addition to pulling friction. So normally when you're setting up conduits, if you can, you're trying to do 1 or 2 90s if you can to a pull point so that you don't build up so much friction. But in this case, we're going underneath a street, underneath a building, and up the other side, and so there is no opportunity to do that, unfortunately. So I go forward and then I pull back, trying to get less friction and trying a new angle, which is what you'd be doing with the fish tape, but here you're hoping to see, what I was hoping to see was like some general clog. Here's another quick example of feeding the camera down some mounting strut that's right where I was trying to feed into the conduit there, just to show you some other things the camera can do. Pretty good. Showing examples of twisting to get around obstacles, because the camera's stiff enough but flexible enough to be able to feed and do that. Here's another not so obvious example of me feeding the camera up the adjoining wall in my living room, which is 14 feet tall, which has a bunch of wires running down from in the attic to feed other rooms, and showing you options with this. There's the the weird power cable that the previous owner ran. Very odd choice. And there's where it goes through oh, there's a power box. And coming up is where the cables go through the fire break in the wall, probably in this case like 8 feet up. In summation, I got to say this has been a very useful tool. Since I shot this video, I'm shooting this ending portion a couple weeks after I shot the beginning portion, and I got to say this tool has been useful twice at work already. One time it helped me solve problems at the junction between walls, and I'm really thankful that I've got it, and if I didn't have it, I'd look to buy one. So I gotta give this a big thumbs up. I think the product's well made as far as I can tell. The quality of the video is better than I expected. I love the fact that it records video or takes pictures depending on what you want. It also records audio, which is really weird, but it helped me in shooting my video, so I'm not complaining. It's got a bunch of end pieces like this guy and the couple in here, and you could feed the camera in with a pull string attached to it, or use this to go retrieve something you've lost. There's a hook, and then this guy with a magnet on it, so you can use these to try and retrieve things you've lost down a hole. So a lot of really handy accessories. I haven't used these yet, but I think I will at some point, because I'm always dropping things. I try not to get anything near a conduit though, because that's bad news for everybody. In any case, I got to give this again a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. Hope you find it useful. Hope to see you next time.